Welcome to the 2024 Robert F. Kennedy Book and Journalism Awards. We will begin shortly. This ceremony and all of the important programs at RFK Human Rights rely on donations from generous friends. We would like to express our thanks to Mort Zuckerman and the Zuckerman Family Foundation for their gift, which makes this ceremony possible. If you enjoy this celebration and would like to see more content from RFK programs, please consider supporting our efforts. Scan the QR code on your screen to donate. Our program will begin shortly.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to the 2024 RFK Book and Journalism Awards. I'm thrilled to be with you to celebrate journalists and authors, and also salute the great man these awards are named after. Senator Robert Francis Kennedy's words remind us that, quote, moral courage is a rarer commodity than bravery in battle or great intelligence, yet it is the one essential, vital quality of those who seek to change a world which yields most painfully to change. Today, we celebrate journalists and authors who have the courage to be agents of change. The RFK Book and Journalism Awards celebrate great writing, great reporting, and great images. But they also honor authors and journalists with heart, compassion, and the tenacity to fight for stories that matter, but make a difference. So today, we salute those who champion the ideals of the late Senator Robert Francis Kennedy. Helping to start our program, I'd like to introduce to you a global leader, an author, an attorney, a great activist, and the president of Robert F. Kennedy Human Rights. She's the daughter of the late senator and my great and close friend. Here's Kerry Kennedy.
Thank you, Michael, and thank you, Peggy Engel, our Journalism Committee Chair. I also want to thank all our judges and supporters who made this event possible. We're thrilled to be here today to celebrate the journalists and authors who speak truth to power and uncover stories that need to be told. The Journalism Awards and the Book Awards are the heart of our work to protect free speech and civic space at RFK Human Rights. We laud the heroes and we sue the governments that are abusing rights. The Journalism Awards were started by a group of journalists who followed my father on his 1968 presidential campaign. And they came together afterwards and they said, on most campaigns, they're asking the politicians, what are you doing about this story, or what are you doing about that injustice? But in my father's case, he kept taking them places they had never been, to Watts, to the Mississippi Delta, to Bed-Stuy, to Indian reservations like Pine Ridge. And he said, why aren't you covering these stories? And so they wanted to start an awards in his name. And they also did it in honor of my sister Rory, who was born after he died. And that's what these journalism awards are. They're really focused on investigative pieces on social justice. And then 10 years later, Arthur Schlesinger wrote Robert F. Kennedy in His Times. If you haven't read it, it's the best book about my father. The proceeds from that book he donated to start the RFK Book Awards. So the writers, the photographers, the authors, and the producers who create these pieces are the bedrock of our work at RFK Human Rights and of our democracy, a free press, and we are honored to recognize them. But even as we celebrate, we must also acknowledge a stark reality. Journalism today is one of the most dangerous jobs on earth. Journalists are badgered and beaten, brutalized and murdered all over the world, especially local press. In 2023, journalists were imprisoned in extraordinary numbers, and over 100 lost their lives in the line of duty. Even more were threatened with assault and subjected to trumped-up charges when they criticized the powerful. Wall Street journalist Evan Gershkovich has been detained by Russia for over a year now. He lost days with family and friends, trapped in a jail cell solely for doing his job. Last fall, a judge sentenced Brazilian reporter Shirley Alves to a year in prison and an $80,000 fine just because Alves reported on a rape case. RFK Human Rights recently filed a complaint on behalf of Abdullah Ahmed Mumin, a renowned Somali journalist whom authorities repeatedly arrested, detained, and tortured in retaliation for his work. Despite the danger, brave women and men continue writing, reporting, and speaking out. They put their lives on the line to bring us the truth and report the stories that move us to action. Journalists empower change. Their work is a rallying cry, drawing attention to abuses and inequities that cannot be ignored. After outlets like the New York Times and Reuters reported on the use of migrant child labor, the Biden administration announced a new task force to investigate these abuses. This story and the action it inspired is just one way that journalists are changing the narrative for the better. While journalists are facing threats from abroad, authors are facing censorship and book bans at home. Libraries and schools have become a major battleground for partisan power plays. Book challenges have risen to historic highs over the past 2 years. More than 25 states are now considering bills that aim to restrict books which libraries can offer and threaten librarians with prison or thousands in fines for handing out certain titles. This is a blatant assault on the freedom of information. At Robert F. Kennedy Human Rights, we support the authors and librarians who make knowledge accessible, and we protect the journalists who speak up and speak out. We hold governments accountable for their attacks on the free press. Thanks to the bravery of the Cano family and the hard work of lawyers at Robert F. Kennedy Human Rights, in February 2024, 38 years after the brutal murder of Colombian journalist Guillermo Cano, the government of Colombia publicly accepted responsibility for the lack of justice in his case. As long as impunity continues, violence compounds. That's why we sue governments who target journalists. And I'm proud to say we have never lost a case. To the journalists, authors, photographers, and producers, thank you. Thank you for your tireless work and your commitment to the public good. We celebrate you and we congratulate you.
Thanks, Kerry. This year, the RFK Journalism Awards Committee was stirred by the exceptional quality and degree of difficulty from the winners in each category. From the New York Times examination of how immigrant children are working as roofers and slaughterhouse cleaners, to the Outlaw Ocean Project finding modern-day slavery on Chinese ships. There was also heartbreaking reporting from Frontline PBS detailing the repression visited on Iranian women protesting headscarf murders. We also were impressed with the lengthy investigations that uncovered police tactics that convinced rape victims to recant their allegations, and an expose on the Mormon churches behind-the-scenes efforts to keep alleged child sex abuse cases secret. There were also examinations into the shameful systems that allow foster children to be abused by psychiatric hospitals, and how abusive New York prison guards are allowed to keep their jobs. I also want to mention student journalists who gave us a far-reaching exploration of the United States following the reversal of Roe v. Wade, and a high school reporter in Illinois who discovered the hidden homeless students in his state. So we want to thank the winners for the work they do. And we also want to thank our audience for tuning in from around the world. We have a number of special presenters who will help us today as we honor journalists who continue to shine a light on the issues that meant so much to the late Senator Robert F. Kennedy: human rights, social justice, and the power of individual action. Let's begin with New York Times best-selling author, CNN contributor, and Emmy Award winner, Van Jones.
Thanks, Peggy. In 1963, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was behind bars. He'd been arrested unjustly for marching for civil rights. And it was during that period that he wrote the famous letter from a Birmingham jail. And in that letter, he says something very important. He says, "Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere." That's a quote. And the criminal justice winner that we have shows us injustices today that are out of sight because they are happening behind bars, happening to people who are in the same kind of jails that Dr. King was when he wrote that letter. The winning entry is called "How New York's Abusive Guards Keep Their Jobs." It's about these abuses happening out of sight by New York prison guards who are hurting prisoners. We want you to see it, but we do want to warn you that some of these images might be deeply disturbing and difficult to watch, but we want you to watch anyway.
Were you involved? Get out. Get out if you're not involved.
This video, obtained by the Marshall Project, shows the culture of cover-up as corrections officers keep quiet following a brutal attack on an inmate. The blue wall of silence is a key reason perpetrators get away with their violent attacks. This is an illustration of the thousands of prison abuse cases that the journalist investigated. In most cases, the guards were never disciplined. Many still remain on the job today. Even though they pored over more than 5,000 disciplinary records, it's safe to say that the cases of abuse are much higher because prisoners are fearful of filing complaints because of retaliation. One video shows how reality and the guard's account just don't match up.
In his official use of force report, Officer Finn wrote that he delivered one strike to the back of Virgil's head with his elbow. The video shows Finn smashing Virgil's head into the wall twice. Second, Finn wrote that he used body holds to bring Virgil to the ground. The video shows Finn rammed Virgil's head into steel bars 4 times, an act that isn't referenced anywhere in his report.
Take it easy. Take it easy.
Third, Finn wrote, "Virgil remained combative." The video shows Virgil appearing to lose consciousness.
The inmate in this case, Melvin Virgil, fell victim to a common practice used to thwart investigations. After the assault, officers falsified what really happened and were able to have Virgil sent to solitary confinement. Virgil, along with the New York Times and Marshall Project, were able to get the body cam footage and reconstruct the actual events. This is one of the rare cases where the release of the video eventually led to a prison sentence for the officer who carried out the attack.
The Criminal Justice Award is given to a team with the New York Times and the Marshall Project. The piece is called "How New York's Abusive Guards Keep Their Jobs." Now it's my pleasure to hand it off to an acclaimed documentary filmmaker. She's got an Emmy Award. She's nominated for an Academy Award. I'm happy to give this over to Rory Kennedy. She's going to introduce and announce the international television writer.
On April 5th, 1968, my father gave a speech in Cleveland, Ohio, following the death of Martin Luther King Jr. One passage from the mindless menace speech rings especially true today. Quote, "We seemingly tolerate a rising level of violence that ignores our common humanity and our claims to civilization. We calmly accept newspaper reports of civilian slaughter in far-off lands." End quote. Our international television entry shows us civilians targeted for violence in a far-off land. This powerful documentary shows the courage and determination of women in Iran who are saying, "Enough is enough." Here's a look at inside the Iranian uprising.
In September 2022, anti-government protests swept across the country after the death of a young woman in police custody. In the crackdown that followed, human rights groups estimate more than 500 Iranians have been killed, including 72 children.
Young Iranians, armed with nothing more than their cell phones, became needed citizen journalists to help tell the story captured in Frontline's documentary, Inside the Iranian Uprising. Foreign journalists are largely banned from the country, so it would take brave actions of young people and the power of social media to help create a movement and tell a story. 22-year-old Mahsa Amini was beaten by morality police and she lapsed into a coma. A young woman at considerable risk snuck into the hospital to get this picture of her in a coma. Then came the shocking news of her death.
On September 16th, news got out that Mahsa Amini had died. A female journalist got into the hospital and photographed her grieving relatives. The picture spread quickly on Twitter.
And just as quickly, the demonstrations began. Women took to the streets without their headscarves in an open act of defiance. Simple chant of 3 words echoed throughout the country: woman, life, freedom. The government responded with violence. Again, it was the citizens who bravely captured the acts of brutality for the world to see.
On September 21st, security units across the country were given an order to severely and seriously confront rioters.
15 men carry out this attack. Then a motorbike runs over the 30-year-old man, and then he's shot at point-blank range. Remarkably, he survives. But not all of the demonstrators will live through these acts of brutality. In the documentary, we hear of the stories of teens like Serena, a young YouTuber who likes to share tips about makeup. And then there's Nika, who loves to sing and dance. Both are full of vitality and smiles. All they want is to grow up in a less repressive regime. But they are killed while taking part in the protests. Over time, the mass protests will die down, but there are still almost daily small acts of defiance. And young girls growing up here still carry with them dreams like Nika and Serena, hopes for a brighter tomorrow.
The winner for international television is the powerful and moving documentary Inside the Iranian Uprising by Majed Macy and Frontline. Now here's the winner of 2 Pulitzers, esteemed New York Times columnist Nick Kristof, with a look at our International Print Award-winning entry.
Our International Print Award winners will be the first to admit that this project wasn't an easy one, but it was an important one. The focus was on China, the superpower of seafood. With a massive shipping fleet and enormous processing capacity, when it comes to seafood, China is head and shoulders above all other countries on the world stage. Getting this important story meant piercing a veil of secrecy in China, and on the high seas to expose a pattern of abuse. Take a look.
In China, the superpower of seafood, we see how Uyghurs are made to work processing the seafood that lands on plates in both Europe and the United States. This story revealed how thousands of workers from Xinjiang province have been forcefully moved across the country to work in these processing plants. But the brutality begins long before the product even gets here. Abuse happens on the open seas, but getting that story is tricky.
There's smokes.
So these journalists resort to unique tactics as bottles weighted down are heaved onto boats aimed at deckhands. Inside the bottles are questions. In some cases, the questions are answered and the bottles are returned.
Again, right up behind us. Yeah, good. All right, let's get the How long have you been on board? 1 year. Where are you from? Indonesia.
It's this painstaking effort that leads to an expose on captive Indonesian deckhands working on Chinese ships, where they endure unspeakable treatment. Daniel Ertenong is employed on a Chinese squid ship. When he lands in a hospital in Uruguay, he's brought to shore suffering from beriberi, a malady caused by a deficiency of vitamin B1 and easily preventable. But there's more. He confides in a translator that he has suffered brutal conditions on board the ship.
He was in his early 20s, lying on a gurney in the ambulance bay. He whispered to her that he'd been beaten and tied by the neck, that he hadn't eaten in weeks.
Daniel went to work on the fishing boat to earn money to pay to renovate his family home. He would never make it back home. He would die 2 hours after arriving at the hospital in Montevideo.
Daniel's family signed a non-disclosure agreement with the Chinese fishing company. In exchange for releasing the company from wrongdoing, they received the equivalent of about $13,000. Money they ended up using to repair their roof. Daniel managed to fix up his parents' house after all.
International print winner is China, the superpower of seafood. Our congratulations go to Ian Urbina and the team at the Outlaw Ocean Project for uncovering this important story. Now, here's Today Show news anchor Craig Melvin with word on our domestic print winner.
Our domestic print winner launched her year-long investigation after hearing an offhand comment from an attorney in Alaska. He said that a psychiatric facility in the state was a dumping ground for foster kids. Julia Lurie did some digging and found out he was right. And the result is the heartbreaking story inside the psychiatric hospitals where foster kids are a gold mine. Take a look at what she found.
The headline says it all. Inside the psychiatric hospitals where foster kids are a gold mine. Julia Lurie spent a year investigating the link between the child welfare system and its scandal-plagued healthcare giant. She tells the heartbreaking story of Katrina Edwards. At 12, she's in foster care and sent to North Star Behavioral Health after saying she wanted to run away from home and commit suicide. Edwards describes it as a mini prison for children. Medicaid would pay more than $500,000 for her care. During her 18 months in and out of the facility, she was sedated, physically abused, restrained, and placed in a quiet room. She's one of several foster kids who share their first-person accounts of the horrific treatment they endured. Nathan Presley had 8 stays at North Star and said this, quote, "They would throw me into a cage and treat me like an animal. I would act like an animal in return, and they would keep on caging me." Alaska is ground zero for this problem, with more foster kids than there are homes and a lack of child welfare caseworkers. Foster children have been sent to North Star 500 times over the past 6 years, earning the company $119 million in Medicaid payments. One expert is quoted as saying, "Unfortunately, in many hospitals, the door only swings one way. You become a patient, and you stay a patient."
Our domestic print winner is Julia Lurie, senior reporter at Mother Jones, for her expose inside the psychiatric hospitals where foster kids are a gold mine. Now, here's my former Today Show colleague and good friend, Natalie Morales.
Years ago, Senator Robert F. Kennedy said, every time we turn our heads the other way, when we see the law flouted, when we tolerate what we know to be wrong, when we close our eyes and ears to the corrupt because we're too busy or too frightened, when we fail to speak up and speak out, we strike a blow against freedom and decency and justice. Reporter Rachel DeLeon refused to look the other way after she uncovered the law being flouted all across the country. And what she found was an upside-down justice system that turns victims into suspects. Here's a glimpse of Victim Suspect, our domestic television winner.
In Victim Suspect, reporter Ray DeLeon spots a story that leads to years of investigative work.
I was searching through local news when I stumbled on a story of a young woman being arrested for making a false report of rape.
DeLeon thought the case was an anomaly, but after some digging, she learned it wasn't.
You're going to be charged with filing a false report.
Charges will be falsely reporting an incident.
They've issued a warrant for your arrest for falsely reporting police or rape.
In the cases Ray was looking at, the women had pled guilty.
A story of victims at their most vulnerable, repeatedly pressured into recanting their allegations. The interrogations can be lengthy affairs, with detectives using deception to intimidate the young women.
As part of your job as a detective, you lie to people that you are interrogating, correct?
Yes. It's called a ruse.
DeLeon would spend 3 years trying to get just one detective to answer her questions. Finally, her hard work pays off, with the lead detective in sexual assault cases in Bridgeport, Connecticut, agreeing to an interview.
Did you ever interview the two men?
I did not. No, they didn't want to be interviewed.
It did come out recently that one of the men had previously been accused of a sexual assault while at Sacred Heart.
Let's stop this and then let's look.
In her reporting, she finds in many cases thorough investigations are lacking, and sometimes suspects are never interviewed. When they are, it's often friendly exchanges like this one, where the suspect is flanked by an attorney and the investigator offers up a statement for him.
So y'all end up having consensual sex. She never said no, never said stop. She was completely into it. Is that right?
That's correct. If any, to be honest, she was extremely flirtatious from the time we picked her up.
Okay. So it was a willing.
It was a willing participant.
Okay.
Both ends. Y'all did y'all's job, and I appreciate it.
Well, I look at it, man. If it was me on the other side of it, I'd want to do the same thing for me.
DeLeon works on this story for 4 years and finds 200 cases of alleged victims of sexual assault who were turned into suspects. And she finds out the answer to the most fundamental question: why?
If I can get her to recant, I'm done. I get an arrest, and I don't have to do a full investigation, and this is another one off my desk.
2 of the young women profiled now train officers around the country.
I fell victim to a rapist and was never given the privilege or dignity to process my assault.
It is a crime to file that false report, and I have to arrest you for it.
If a survivor is coming to you and they need your help, and you don't help them, there's a monster walking around free.
Our domestic television winner is Victim Suspect. Our congratulations to Rachel DeLeon, Motto Pictures, the Center for Investigative Reporting, and Netflix for this amazing and exhaustive investigative documentary. Now here's the co-anchor of the PBS NewsHour, Amna Nawaz.
Our eyes are laser focused on the Middle East as the horrors of war are on full display each night. Our international photography winner has spent months capturing the images that show the war in Gaza. Let's take a look at the work of Associated Press photojournalist Fatima Shbeir.
Destruction, death, despair. This is the daily dose of reality in Gaza. Through the skill of brilliant photojournalist Fatima Shbeir, we're able to see the bombardment of Gaza and the plight of Palestinians. They struggle to get basics like food, water, and shelter as the humanitarian crisis here grows daily. Fatima isn't just covering this story, she's living it. She's a local Palestinian, so like her subjects, she moves regularly with her family and colleagues, just trying to stay safe in this tiny strip of land that is a scene to so much suffering. Shbeir remains fiercely determined to get these images out, despite regular cuts to internet service in Gaza. Even with the daily perils she faces, she covers the war in an objective, fact-based way, showing the long-standing tensions between Israel and Hamas. Perhaps her most haunting images are those of the children, too young to try and make sense of what they're witnessing. Some, like these children pulled from the rubble of a building hammered by airstrikes in Han Yunis, may not even survive to know peace in their lifetime.
This year's winner of the International Photography Award is Associated Press photojournalist Fatima Shbeir, for her entry, War in Gaza. Now, here's Soledad O'Brien, host of Matter of Fact, the nationally syndicated talk show.
Ask any mom and they will tell you that witnessing the awe in their baby's eyes and listening to their giggles are well worth all those sleepless nights. We've heard a lot about the joys of being a mom, but a Washington Post photojournalist wanted to tell another story about motherhood. For years, he had heard the stories of Black women in America disproportionately confronting difficulties just to give birth. So he set about to tell their story in photos. Here's a look at the domestic photography winning entry, Black Maternal Mortality.
An Indian philosopher once wrote, "The moment a baby is born, the mother is also born." The domestic photography winner shows that in the state of Texas, for Black women, giving birth isn't always a joyous moment. It can be extraordinarily dangerous. The state accounts for 10% of all births in the United States, and yet when it comes to childbirth, Black women die at more than twice the rate of their white counterparts and 4 times that of Hispanic women. Health disparities are a big problem in a healthcare system where they are often marginalized. In this profile, we meet Black midwives and doulas assisting Black women giving birth. Mimi Bingham of Houston is profiled. She lost her daughter in childbirth and now is devoted to making sure every baby arrives safely. The winning entry is shot in black and white to achieve 2 objectives: to give it a classic, timeless look, but to also illustrate that, like old black and white photos, this issue has been with us for a long time.
Our domestic photography winner is Black Maternal Mortality. Our congratulations to Jahi Chikwendu of the Washington Post. Now, here's MSNBC's Simone Sanders.
The late Irish journalist Dawn Foster grew up in poverty, and she once wrote this: "The homeless often feel invisible, allowed to plummet through widening holes in the social safety net, then hidden in doorways from which people avert their eyes." Our high school print winner went in search of those invisible homeless children in Illinois. He found they were falling through the social safety net. In fact, they weren't even counted. Here's a look at the hidden homeless.
In December of 2023, the Associated Press reported that the U.S. had hit the highest rate of homelessness with more than 653,000 people living on the streets. High school senior Nathan Yuan thought if the numbers are so high, clearly students experiencing homelessness must be in an underreported population. So just how big is the problem? The Naperville teen decided to find out. The exhaustive data and analysis that the Central Times at Naperville High did shows that in the state of Illinois, it's likely that more than 500 of the state's 868 high school districts were underreporting homeless youth. This graphic shows how many are identified as homeless, but it's dramatically less than the conservative analysis by the paper, and as you can see, the likely numbers are even higher. In fact, up to 55,000 students could be uncounted, and that's important because, as the headline states, these students are guaranteed supports by law. The hidden homeless need that help because it's not just about being homeless. As one expert is quoted as saying, that means they often don't have access to bathing or getting food the way they need it. And when they don't have those basic needs, it's extremely hard to focus on things like school when you're trying to survive.
The Hidden Homeless is the winner of our high school print award. Our congratulations to Nathan Nguyen of the Central Times at Naperville Central High School in Illinois. Now here's Telemundo Network news anchor Aranza Loizaga.
There's an old saying, a child should be taught to learn and not forced to earn. That's certainly been the belief in the U.S., where a law was passed in 1938 to outlaw child labor. While the law has been on the books for more than 80 years, enforcement is lax. Hannah Dreyer of the New York Times found that out as she traveled through 13 states. She found children escaping poverty and violence had become ensnared in a shadow workforce. Here's a look at our non-traditional media winner, Alone and Exploited.
Reporter Hannah Dreyer traveled to 13 states where she witnessed countless violations of child labor laws. Her exhaustive reporting is showcased in the newspaper, but also featured on the Times podcast.
From the New York Times, I'm Sabrina Tavernisi, and this is The Daily.
The
this is sort of an open secret in the immigration world. These are kids working factory jobs in a lot of cases, factories that supply some of the biggest brands, Fruit of the Loom, Ford, General Motors.
Hannah's reporting took her to several plants where kids work overnight and end their shifts exhausted, but still sling on their backpacks and head off to school during the day. In her multimedia series, she also introduces us to underage construction workers in perilous professions.
We spoke to more than 100 child roofers across the country over the last year and a half. These are children who are hauling bundles of new shingles that can weigh 100 pounds up ladders, and then they walk onto these very steeply pitched roofs, usually without any kind of harness or safety gear.
These children are fleeing poverty in Central America, and they come to the United States to pursue the American dream. But in some cases, find the American dream is nothing more than a nightmare.
One of the kids who I spent a lot of time with is Anthony Padilla. He fell 30 feet from a roof last year and was severely brain damaged.
A year later, he's still struggling to get around and to talk. These are vulnerable children living in a strange country, exploited by their employers, working in dangerous jobs. This jarring series prompted members of Congress in both parties to launch oversight investigations, which resulted in the introduction of 16 child labor law bills.
Alone and Exploited is the winner in the non-traditional media category. Our congratulations to Hannah Dreyer and the New York Times for this searing exposés. Now here's Kimberly Adams, the senior Washington correspondent for Marketplace and the co-host of the Marketplace podcast, Make Me Smart.
All of us remember the Boston Globe's Spotlight team and their explosive investigation into the Catholic Church and its efforts to conceal widespread sexual abuse by priests. Associated Press reporter Mike Resendez was a part of that Globe team, and he's also a part of a team of journalists who worked on our winning radio entry. Using many of the painstaking techniques used in the Globe investigation, they turned their attention to the Mormon Church. They were able to secure thousands of pages of sealed court records to expose efforts by the Mormon Church to keep a lid on allegations of child sex abuse by clergy and church members. Take a listen to Hidden Confessions of the Mormon Church.
From the Center for Investigative Reporting and PRX, this is Reveal.
This podcast looks at the case of Chelsea Goodrich, who accused her father, a one-time Mormon bishop, of sexually abusing her. A police recording shows that when he was questioned, he did acknowledge his unwanted behavior.
You say you never crossed the line. What would you say the line is versus not crossing the line? Because that's kind of a...
Never touched her inappropriately. Never even thought about it. And it was an accident. I was aroused and talked to her about that, and that's the end of the story. It was just... period. I think that's happened to everybody, maybe to some degree, every guy in some degree in some way, and you say, but that's history, move on, don't do that again.
The questioning led to his arrest on charges of lewd behavior with a minor, and then came another startling revelation.
After reading about his arrest, another woman steps forward. She says John gave her a drug that he uses to sedate his dental patients. And in a recorded call with the woman, John actually admits to drugging her and then having sex.
It was fun as heck, but I would never do that again. It's just wrong.
But Chelsea knew the church had excommunicated her father after he confessed to what he had done to another bishop.
Bishop Miller said, I hope that I'm subpoenaed if there's a case, a criminal case, because boy will I talk. And he said, I know that I would not want that man anywhere near my own grandchildren. And I felt that he definitely had the courage at the time to testify about what John had confessed to him.
But something called clergy penitent privilege prevented the bishop's testimony and helped derail the criminal prosecution of Chelsea's father. The reporting team uncovers secret documents and recordings that demonstrate how the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints uses a legal playbook to keep child sex abuse cases secret. The result? Predators remain free and unsuspecting children remain vulnerable.
The radio winner is a team effort from the Associated Press and Reveal, the Center for Investigative Reporting. Our congratulations to Michael Montgomery, Michael Resendez, Dason Deeren, Brett Myers, and Tom Berman for their amazing work on Hidden Confessions of the Mormon Church. Here's author and historian Annette Gordon-Reed.
Dobbs. It's just one word, but it's also an earthquake that shook the United States. The Dobbs decision by the Supreme Court in June of 2022 sent shockwaves throughout the country, upending decades of precedent. The ruling overturned Roe versus Wade, which legalized abortion. The result has been chaos across the United States. College students explore the far-reaching impact of the ruling. The result is our College Journalism Award winner, America After Roe. Take a look.
America After Roe is a sweeping investigation into the aftermath of the Supreme Court reversal of Roe versus Wade. There are more than a dozen tech stories, as well as podcasts, and 12 remarkable video stories like this one.
The night before June 24th, 2022, those night hours, I funded my last abortion and flight at like 2 a.m. because we know what's going to happen tomorrow morning.
There is no constitutional right to an abortion in this country anymore.
As clinics closed in the U.S., south of the border, an underground network is formed to provide abortion pills for those trapped in states with draconian abortion restrictions. The situation is especially dire for undocumented women with unwanted pregnancies.
I mean, I think there's a lot of fear in general if you're an undocumented person in this state or in this country. It gets worse when you start thinking about access to abortion care.
These laws are very terrifying.
In 10 weeks, these college journalists traveled across the country and into Mexico, covering every angle, including doctors who now feel handcuffed by extreme abortion laws.
I truly had a moment where I felt like somebody had taken my hands and had tied them behind my back.
I thought this fight was over. I thought it was done. We had done the hard work. My generation had gone forward and, held the banner and made it safe and reasonable for the women to come after us.
And they introduce us to patients like Texan Amanda Zaraski. She and her husband Josh were excited at the thought of a baby girl. She was in her second trimester when things went horribly wrong. Amanda developed sepsis and needed an abortion, but the medical team told her there was nothing they could do because of the restrictive laws in Texas.
It was just so infuriating. It was like a slap in the face because it's like I'm here with sepsis because of this law that, was passed, less than a week ago? I mean,
a few days at that point.
It was just so infuriating.
I may have been one of the first who was affected by the overturning of Roe in Texas, but I'm certainly not the last. More people have been and will continue to be harmed until we do something about it.
America After Roe is our college-winning entry from Carnegie Knight News 21 at the Walter Cronkite School of Journalism and Mass Communication at Arizona State University. Now here is CNN's host of The Lead with Jake Tapper.
We all know that cartoons are a clever form of commentary. It's an art form that dates back to the 18th century. A great cartoon can make you stop and think, and in some cases, it can even help to shape or move public opinion on issues that matter. Peter Cooper certainly does that. Let's take a look at his winning body of work.
Cartoons can often be silly and satirical, but Peter Cooper's work is often political, personal, and persuasive. He takes aim at some of the most pressing issues of our time, with limited text or no text at all. As Cooper puts it, he's often speechless in many ways, given the magnitude of the problems we are all facing. So he finds using the vernacular of comics a way to convey ideas that can break through any language barriers. As he points out in his cartoons, while we stare at our devices, worshiping technology, waters are receding and fires burn in Canada. Every dimension of climate change is explored in his work with a mixture of horror and humor. But in his works, you can also find hope. This panel shows that in the showdown between corporations and kids, he's banking on the kids who are gradually pushing back in an effort to save our environment.
Our cartoon winner is Peter Cooper. Congratulations, Peter, for calling attention to these important issues. Now it's my pleasure to introduce two-time Emmy Award-winning broadcast journalist John Siegenthaler Jr.
Hi, everyone. It's always an honor to take part in the RFK Awards celebration, recognizing some of the best reporting from around the world. I'm proud to be here today to announce the Siegenthaler Prize winner named for my father, a colleague and close friend of Robert Kennedy. John Siegenthaler spent most of his life as a journalist. He was a fierce defender of the First Amendment, as well as a champion for civil rights. In 1961, working as a chief aide to Attorney General Robert Kennedy, he was sent to Alabama to try to protect the Freedom Riders. He was savagely beaten in Montgomery by an angry white mob. This award recognizes reporting under difficult circumstances. It requires courage and commitment. Our committee chose 27-year-old photojournalist Fatima Shabir and her international photography entry, War in Gaza, as this year's Siegenthaler Prize winner. She was able to produce heartbreaking images, beginning with the October 7th massacre by Hamas, all the way to the present-day plight of the Palestinians struggling to survive in Gaza.
For this winning and this war, I can just say one thing. Whatever you are seeing in the pictures, it was from a real experience. It was personal, and I was part of it as a journalist and as a Palestinian citizen. I shared the people in Gaza the same situation, the same suffering, and the same sad details in every single day. From fleeing our houses in the north, the lack of everything, water, good food, safety, treatment, and being worried about your family all the time. It was like telling my story through documenting the people in Gaza. And also what made this war difficult and different to me, that you have to keep your emotions, your feelings away and stop thinking about your life details and to just focus on the coverage. Because we are there for the truth and only the truth. And if you are not there, something big and important is gonna be missed, which is a disaster. Finally, I'm incredibly honored to be recognized for this award. It means a lot to me and to my work. I'm so proud and grateful. Thank you.
Her impressive work and her bravery make her deserving of the 2024 John Siegenthaler Courage in Journalism Award. Congratulations, Fatima. Now, here's Peggy to announce our grand prize winner in this year's competition.
Thanks, John. Our committee was so impressed this year with the exceptional quality of all the winners in each category. Our choice, because of the sheer number of people losing basic human rights, is the unprecedented collaboration of college journalists who detailed what's actually happening on the ground after the loss of women's reproductive rights in America. It's rare that college journalism winners capture the grand prize, simply because of the competition with established professional journalists. But this was such an exceptional effort, telling the stories of women, doctors, families, courts, and law enforcement, all trying to cope with life-threatening situations. With Carnegie Knight News 21 taking the lead, they marshaled student journalists from a host of colleges. They reported in 34 communities across the country and into Mexico to show what's truly happening after the Supreme Court upended 50 years of settled law. They were able to accomplish in 10 weeks what should have taken 10 months.
My name is Elise Gregg, and I'm a student at Florida International University. I am so excited that nearly a year after our work, News 21's 2023 cohort is being honored with an RFK Award. Our coverage of the reversal of Roe v. Wade not only covered a wide range of topics, from maternal health to the legal world to marginalized groups and reproductive care, but we worked hard to go deep to tell stories that weren't being told.
Our stories through text, video, audio, photos, and graphics examined how the decision has gone beyond abortion bans and courthouse battles to broadly affect healthcare, culture, policy, and people nationwide.
America After Roe was the highlight of my collegiate career.
With her reporting, we got to see firsthand the importance that this topic had for many Americans. Everywhere we looked, we saw battlegrounds form and people divide over an issue that remains relevant even today.
To be a part of such wide-ranging coverage at the time just felt like doing the work I was doing on a daily basis, but in hindsight, I recognize how hard we all worked to produce this amazing tapestry of work. One that I think we can say we're all proud of and that we're lucky enough to celebrate once again with this award. Thank you.
Hi, I'm so grateful that we were able to receive the Robert F. Kennedy Journalism Award. As one of the video journalists of News 21, I think receiving this award just shows that all the hard work that we put in, researching, contacting, and telling the story of what's currently going on in our country, it matters. And thank you so much for highlighting that and showing that off today. Thank you.
Being a part of a team that was so dedicated to something so critical in our generation that surrounds reproductive rights, to be recognized and receive this prestigious award from the organization, we are deeply grateful and thankful for being chosen for it.
We are all incredibly excited and honored to win the Robert F. Kennedy Journalism Award.
Winning a RFK award is a testament to the project's impact and its contribution to fostering understanding and dialogue around deeply divisive issues. It underscores the vital role that journalism plays in holding power to account and amplifying voices of those affected by significant legal and social changes.
And for that reason, it is an incredible honor to see the team, and more importantly, the stories, be recognized with the RFK Journalism Award. Thank you.
Our congratulations to our college journalism winners for also earning this year's grand prize for their series, America After Roe. Our awards take an army of remarkable journalists who volunteer their time each year. I would like to thank the dozens of judges who took part throughout the selection process, reading, watching, and listening to every word, every photo, and every clip. I would especially like to single out the distinguished journalists who help us each year by being part of our journalism committee. They are Kimberly Adams, Roberta Baskin, Jennifer Eight Lee, and John Sigenthaler Jr.
Now it's time for our book award. Before we introduce our winner, I'd like to honor the late Arthur Schlesinger Jr. As you know, Arthur wrote the wonderful biography, Robert Kennedy and His Times, and used the proceeds from the sale of that book to found this book award. I would like to thank my fellow book judges, Washington Post and New York Times editor Bill Hamilton, the Pulitzer Prize-winning author and historian, Annette Gordon-Reed, and American historian and author Ted Widmer. Once again, this year, we had several remarkable books to consider, which made our job all the more difficult. We finally decided to award a special recognition honor to author Timothy Egan for what the Washington Post described as a terrifying, riveting portrait of the Ku Klux Klan in the 1920s. Tim Egan's book, A Fever in the Heartland, The Ku Klux Klan's Plot to Take Over America and the Woman Who Stopped Them, is a must-read. The 2024 Robert F. Kennedy Book Award goes to author and historian Blair L.M. Kelly. While an awful lot has been written about the white working class, it's Kelly's book, Black Folk, that tells the story of Black workers who have contributed so much to our American story. Black Folk is amazing history, but it's also a deeply personal book. Kelly shares the story of John D., her grandfather, the son of a Georgia sharecropper. It's the weaving of the personal with the historical that makes this such a rich, enjoyable, and important work. We couldn't be more proud to bestow this year's book award to Blair L.M. Kelly.
Thank you so much. I'm deeply honored and profoundly grateful to receive the 2024 RFK Human Rights Book Award for my work, Black Folk, The Roots of the Black Working Class. This award means the world to me, not only as an author, but also as someone who believes deeply in the power of storytelling to illuminate the struggles and triumphs of those too often overlooked. This book has been a labor of love, born from the rich history of my own family and countless stories of resilience and perseverance that have been passed down over the generations. This is a tribute to the Black working class, whose hard work and unwavering spirit have built the foundations of this nation. I want to thank the RFK Human Rights Organization for this incredible honor. Your commitment to justice, equality, and human dignity is an inspiration to us all. At a moment when the importance of Black history is being questioned, your recognition of this work validates the importance of these stories and ensures that they reach a wider audience and foster greater understanding and appreciation. To my family, thank you for your endless support. Thank you. And thank you for sharing your stories with me. Your experiences and your wisdom are the heart of Black folk. To my readers, I hope this book helps you see the world through the eyes of those who have labored with dignity and determination, often in the face of tremendous adversity. Thank you again to the RFK Human Rights Organization for this esteemed award. It is a privilege to be part of a legacy that champions human rights and social justice. Together, may we continue to honor the past as we continue to strive for a more equitable future. Thank you.
We are so pleased that the winner of our book award this year is Black Folk, The Roots of the Black Working Class by Blair L.M. Kelly. That brings our 2024 RFK Book and Journalism Awards to a close. As I say goodbye, I'd like to remind you that you can find more information about these awards and the amazing work being done by Robert F. Kennedy Human Rights just by visiting this website, rfkhumanrights.org. Thanks again, everyone, for joining us this year. Look forward to speaking with you next year as we celebrate once again great journalism and great literature. Thanks, everyone, for joining us.
Congratulations to all of our winners, and thanks to all of our special guest presenters and to our viewers. To learn more about the important work of RFK Human Rights, we invite you to go to our website, rfkhumanrights.org. Remember, if you would like to support our global efforts, feel free to scan the QR code that appears on your screen. Thank you for joining us for the 2024 RFK Book and Journalism Awards.